Tonight, grappling with Ontario's first COVID-19 related death.
It's a reminder of the importance of this disease.
Ontario's state of emergency to fund the fight against the virus, as officials warn limited supplies of testing swabs means many more may be sick.
You should be breathing hard now. Push, push, push.
From exercising to parenting, the virtual solutions to life in isolation. And the Shamrock scavenger hunt to remind cooped-up kids they can still have fun this St. Patrick's Day. Good evening, I'm Chris Glover. Today was an extraordinary day with so many people in isolation to prevent the spread of COVID-19. It was both boring and lonely for a lot of people, but for one Ontario family, it was devastating. A 77-year-old man from Barrie was the province's first COVID-19 related death. The tragic news comes on a day that was most certainly a turning point in the fight to contain the virus. We are now under a state of emergency. Farah Morelli now with the significant step.
It's the news that health officials in Ontario have been bracing for weeks.
It saddens me to report that we've had a COVID-19 associated death in Simcoe, Muskoka. The deceased was in his 70s, had other pre-existing medical conditions that would put him at risk, and so the relationship between his infection and his death is under investigation by the Chief Coroner's Office.
Morning, everyone.
News of that fatality came just hours after Premier Doug Ford declared a state of emergency. Part of that announcement, more money for healthcare workers.
That is why today I'm announcing the first stage of our COVID-19 emergency relief package.
The provincial government is investing $304 million to step up the healthcare response. Here's a snapshot of where that money is going. $100 million will go toward hospital capacity. That's to treat COVID-19 patients. $50 million to bring in more personal protective equipment and supplies for frontline workers, first responders, and patients. Another $25 million will go to set up a fund for respite care, child care services, and other needs specifically for frontline healthcare workers. $50 million will go to making long-term care homes safer, and the remaining funds will go toward things like staffing in residential facilities, protecting seniors in retirement homes, and Indigenous communities.
I applaud the Premier. I think he's done exactly what we were hoping he would do. I can tell you in our hospital, a cheer went up as we heard his announcement.
The head of Toronto's University Health Network said today the money comes as a huge relief.
So I think it means we can just frankly stop worrying about how we're going to fund what we know will be a very expensive and very challenging time in healthcare. I think it also allows many of our staff who are feeling quite vulnerable to feel much less so.
One of the questions health officials face today, why more people are not being tested. The man in Barrie who died was not tested for COVID-19 when he was admitted to hospital.
So far, the issue has been that we have had a shortage of the swabs that are used for testing, but that is being worked on very hard, and they will be up to a good supply very soon.
It's quite clear that there's a much greater desire for testing than is what is actually being able to be achieved.
The exact cause of this man's death is still under investigation, but what's interesting is that neither he nor the person that he was in contact with had traveled outside the country recently, which begs the question of community transmission and how prevalent that is here in Ontario. Health officials still maintain that is very low. Farah Morelli, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, despite the low risk of the virus spreading through our community, health officials say it is happening.
We've seen an accelerated pace in terms of new case onset in these recent days. And as well, we have seen some early signs of local transmission.
Toronto is dealing with 108 confirmed cases of COVID-19, and the city is ramping up efforts to reduce community spread by shutting down non-essential services and sending staff home. City Hall, Metro Hall, and city civic centers will be closed to the public starting tomorrow until at least April 5th. All staff will continue to be paid, and some may be recalled as needed.
We are doing this in the interest of setting an example and following our own advice from our own medical officer of health and other medical officers of health concerning the need for people, wherever possible, to stay home.
And Mayor John Tory says essential services will continue to run, including emergency services, Toronto Water, garbage and recycling, transit and shelters. The city says there are currently no confirmed COVID-19 cases in Toronto's homeless population. But to aid in social distancing, they're opening new shelter spaces and screening people before they're allowed in. The city has also created a program where any homeless people awaiting test results can stay in isolation. Now to some developing news tonight. We've learned the federal government is set to announce an aid package tomorrow. More than $25 billion is expected to help Canadians through this tough time. The money will be delivered through existing social safety net programs such as employment insurance and the Canada Child Benefit. Watch CBC News Network tomorrow for full details on that plan. Now, many workers have already been laid off because of COVID-19. Others are working from home and spending way more time in isolation. Public Health says it's important to distance yourself from other people right now to contain the spread of the virus, but that is already taking a toll on some of us. Ramna Shahzad is live now with what people are doing to stay sane. Ramna, let's start with virtual exercise classes.
Right. For me and many others, exercise is about staying fit, yeah, but it's also about being mentally healthy and engaged, something that Toronto's fitness community has quickly realized is important for people in our city right now. Today, my social media was flooded with videos and so many live videos of fitness instructors around the city who are offering their services online. Boxing classes, boot camps, cardio workouts, yoga, totally free through social media. One fitness instructor I spoke to led a whole class this evening through Instagram Live. Normally, Julie Harris leads a spin class at 6 Cycle on Queen West, but today she adjusted the workout so anybody at home could work out with her.
I know that there's a lot of people that are home and alone, and they're craving that connection to their body and to each other, and movement is therapy. So if we can't get together and spin and we can't get together and move as a group, I thought we would get together virtually and do what we can.
So she also points out that once these gyms and studios can start running again, they'll have heavy losses to recover from. But for the time being, the focus for her and others like her is to help as many people as possible get through this time in the most healthy and safe way possible.
I was in one of those virtual workout classes today, Ramna, and it was great for me, a great release, but another person in the class was commenting on how her kids were just sitting bored and watching her. I know a lot of parents are stuck trying to come up with ways to keep their little ones occupied right now. What are they telling you?
Right. Some parents I've chatted with tonight say the key is to make sure their children stick to a schedule and a routine. But a parenting columnist I spoke to says it is March break, a time for kids to relax and let loose a bit.
Most of us have, some odd board games. We might not even have all the pieces, but that can make it all the more interesting because then you can sort of invent your own board games and come up with some board games of your own. Just look for ways to make life better for other people. I think if there's one thing that's going to boost your spirits as a family, that's going to be the thing. So maybe think about, is there a grandparent that would like to be playing online Scrabble? Do you want to have like a family video conference call? And do you want to start some crazy conversation via text message where people just share, crazy cat or dog videos all day? We have one of those threads going in our family right now, I should say.
Right. My family has one of those group chats too. So another thing she said, parents should remember that this is going to be one of the defining experiences of their children's childhood. So think about what you can do to make these moments fun and happy to look back on. Advice, I think, that could apply to everyone right now, Chris.
Oh, it certainly does. And we had my grandma also on FaceTime today with everybody. It's just nice to see families pulling together right now. Thanks, Ramna.
Thanks.
And Suzanne Leonard joins us now with a first look at your weather forecast. Suzanne.
Well, Chris, in honor of St. Patrick's Day today, my map is all green. How about that? We have seen some highs today, pretty decent, 7-8 degrees. Oshawa, Peterborough, the showers lingered a little bit longer, even some double digits. Down towards Windsor. Big news this week. We are counting down the last few official days of winter. Now, we all know living in Canada that doesn't mean we're done with wintry weather altogether, but as far as the calendar is concerned, the spring equinox, equal periods of daylight and nighttime hours, 11:49 p.m. So that is something. Spring is coming. Sun is coming up tomorrow, 7:23 a.m. What's ahead is a mix of sun and cloud for tomorrow, trending to a brighter day than we will see the following day. We are getting onto the storm track, and a little later in the program, I'll be telling you how that might affect us. Yes, that little bit of a mix there did suggest a touch of freezing rain or snow mix northwest of the GTA, up towards Caledon and the lovely Hockley Valley. That would be tomorrow overnight. So look for some late day increasing cloud tonight, a seasonal -5, and Chris, clear skies. Beautiful night for stargazing. I know you like that sun. Tomorrow.
Great. Thanks, Suzanne.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
So Ontario has declared a state of emergency, but what exactly does that mean? First, the definition. A state of emergency is a situation or an impending situation that constitutes a danger of major proportions that could result in serious harm. And a disease is specifically mentioned as one of those situations. With a virus outbreak, the big concern is not overwhelming the healthcare system, so trying to stop the spread of the virus through the community is critical. All provinces have the power to declare states of emergency, and while slightly different, they all trace back to World War II. Canada can declare a national emergency, but unlike in the US, that's not required to release federal money. And as a result, Canada has not officially declared a national emergency since the Emergencies Act was passed in 1988. In Ontario, a state of emergency gives the Premier sweeping powers that include limiting personal travel. But so far, we know transit is still running and there are no curfews in place. It also allows the Premier to shut down public, even private buildings. And for now, we know malls and offices can stay open, but most other places, including restaurants and daycares, have been forced to shut down until March 30th. That 2-week period is all that's allowed right off the bat, but it can be extended if officials think the need is still there.
In the midst of this pandemic and state of emergency, there are many who are trying to help out in any way they can. I'm Kelda Yoon in Mississauga. Coming up, I'll tell you how volunteers across the GTA are coming together to make sure those in need get the help they need, and how one local neighborhood is trying to spread a little bit of joy on this St. Patrick's Day.
It's day one of a new reality for bars and restaurants across Toronto that have been ordered to stop serving customers at their properties. Owners and employees still don't know how they'll get by.
We really don't know what to expect, and then that's where rent and mortgages and bills, it will become more and more difficult to take care of those.
A new report by the Canadian Federation of Independent Business spelled out a dire situation. It found that 25% of small businesses couldn't withstand a 50% drop in sales if the situation lasted longer than a month. Toronto says moves to delay tax collection and establish a contingency fund will help. Premier Doug Ford has also suggested help for businesses is on the way. And as we mentioned, we're expecting details from the federal government tomorrow on a massive aid package worth more than $25 billion. The uncertainty of the coronavirus is causing a lot of worry, but it's also bringing out the best in some people. Kelda Yoon looks at how people in the GTA are helping and brightening the day of their neighbors.
Here at the Muslim Welfare Center in Mississauga, Hamara Shami is waiting for bags of groceries to be packed, but they're not for herself.
People are very vulnerable at this point, and I feel like as a Canadian, we must step up and do something.
This afternoon, she's making a delivery to a woman who lives nearby, a refugee from Tanzania who is 6 months pregnant and has no family support.
She reached out to us because now she could not take the public transit, which was not very safe for her to do.
Shami is one of over 800 people across the GTA who have signed up to be a volunteer for the Good Neighbor Project.
So once someone calls, we get all the information, like which area they belong to, which region, the street address, and then we'll go look at our database of all the volunteers who signed up for it.
Volunteers then go out to buy the necessities and drop them off at the person's home. Tariq Syed helped to come up with the idea to help the vulnerable.
It was last week when I was out with my kids doing some grocery shopping, and then we noticed that there were a lot of senior people in the grocery store who were struggling to buy stuff, going through the lines.
This is the real Canadian thing to do, and Canadians are showing their true spirit.
And for those who are able to venture out, Shoppers Drug Mart is dedicating the first opening hour to customers who need assistance, including seniors and people living with disabilities.
I needed bread, I needed some, just some sweets.
Meanwhile, in the Leslieville neighborhood, families have found a way to have a little bit of fun on this St. Patrick's Day.
The idea is people put up a shamrock in their window or on their door, and we walk around the neighborhood and we make it a scavenger hunt.
Are you sure? Yeah, there is. Okay, you counted?
Adele Shaw came up with the idea. Parents were also advised to come out with their kids at different times in order to avoid a large gathering.
I thought it was a great way to keep a sense of community and keep some fun and excitement without being socially isolated.
It's really good, and it gives us time to get fresh air.
We're all doing what we can to stay, I think, a vibrant and happy community.
Kelda Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
At times, parts of the city look like a ghost town today. I'm Greg Ross. Many Torontonians electing to self-isolate to protect against COVID-19. Coming up, we'll have more on Toronto's unusually empty streets.
With all the closures because of COVID-19, Toronto looks eerily different right now. Greg Ross shows us how the new rules have changed things.
Some parts of the city look like a ghost town today, even during peak times.
It's like a horror movie. It's freaky deaky. It's unsettling, yeah. Right now, there's nothing, right? Just the pigeons.
Union Station is normally packed with commuters, many coming in and out of downtown for work. But most avoided public transportation today. This man did take the subway.
No, it was easy to keep 3 feet away from people. There's a lot of space on there. Very rare.
Subway cars were not the only places unusually empty today. It's lunchtime, and this food court in downtown Toronto is normally packed with people. But instead, we see that they've closed down the seating area completely. And while most of the shops remain open, other than those who work here, there's not many other people. It was more of the same in some of the city's most popular spaces. Dundas Square, the heart of downtown Toronto, always a very popular tourist destination. And normally on a weekday, we would see this place packed with people. But today, not a lot of pedestrian or vehicle traffic for that matter.
Well, normally there'd be, a couple thousand people around in every direction, right? And there's not.
This man says he was here on vacation from Mexico.
Everything is closed. I don't see any attraction for Toronto.
He did get to go shopping at the Eaton Centre, one of the many malls around Toronto still open today, but not very busy.
All right, just pulling into the Yorkdale Mall here. Normally, it is very difficult to get a parking spot close to the front. Today, we're able to pull up and park just steps from the front entrance.
I've never seen it this dead. Even when it's closed, I've never seen it this dead.
This family ventured to Yorkdale Mall because they say they needed to pick up a few things. They didn't seem too concerned about warnings to stay away from public places.
Well, basically, if you don't get too close to people, you're probably all right. Or you use hand sanitizer. I use the hand sanitizer when I went in, when I go out.
This man also went shopping today, but he says it was only because he needed something to help him pass the time while living in self-isolation.
I just picked up an Xbox. Figured if I'm going to be home and can't go out and watch sports, I'll play them at home.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Let's get back to Suzanne Leonard now with a look at your extended forecast. Suzanne, tell me something I'm going to love.
Well, I know you'll love this, Chris, as will our viewers. You know, what struck me about this Toronto Almanac, these are some notable stats from this date, is 16.3 centimeters back in 1950, albeit, but this would be 3 times the normal amount of March snow. Believe it or not, our average is about 4.5 centimeters of snow this month. Pretty decent, considering that most of us would consider March to be definitely a winter, end of winter month. Normal high 4, normal low -5 this time of year. Here's the aforementioned storm track we were talking about. Cloud cover is white and precipitation green for rain and purple generally here for snow. So you'll see there's another swath of snow in the north Wednesday overnight. That's that system kind of grazing us with a few showers overnight. Doesn't look as bad tomorrow as some of the earlier forecast models had suggested. When I say not as bad, I should say not as wet, not to editorialize. But we've got a gathering system and a moisture feed as the jet stream or storm track sets up across the Great Lakes. And that'll be the dividing line. Cold Arctic air here, warm moisture trying to surge north. And that might even help to feed a thunderstorm here in southern Ontario early Friday. Certainly stateside. Quite a sharp boundary setting up, and this is when we get into our wetter weather Thursday afternoon, evening, overnight, looking at a good 10 millimeters for many areas, and then some clear breaks and certainly an abundance of warmth, and that's one of the key triggers or ingredients for thunderstorms, if you will. So I wouldn't rule it out. Snow in northern Ontario, Quebec, and then that front comes through. A very changeable day on Friday. Temperatures going way up, and of course the spring equinox. Well, I need to tell you about that too. What's ahead? Again, we've got a little bit of unsettled weather tomorrow overnight and a more significant low. All rain Thursday overnight, and our temperatures are a little bit all over the map as a result. Just want to quickly show you southwestern Ontario. Clear skies as well for us. We're down to about -5 in the GTA overnight, and then we count down last full day of winter officially tomorrow. Spring equinox 11:49 p.m. Thursday. We get windy on Friday. Look at that early day high and it should stick with us for much of the day. The winds pick up, the sun breaks out as the rain showers move away, and boy, are we a lot colder through this weekend. But it looks like a dry weekend ahead.
Love that. Thanks, Suzanne.
You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am.
Coming up, we'll show you more from this social distance sing-along organized by a popular Toronto choir. We'll be right back.
Baby, don't you know about winter, spring, summer?
Before we go, in an effort to keep people's spirits up, Toronto's Choir hosted a very different event tonight. They called it a social distance sing-along.
We're totally inspired by what was going on in Italy, people playing instruments and people hanging out and being really creative with the way they express themselves and spreading joy, which is what Choir is all about.
Do you think you can tell?
The choir's two leaders hosted the event, which would usually be at a bar or community center, from the safety of their home. The group released a song list and lyrics on their Facebook page so that anyone could join, and choir says it's been sad to have to cancel and postpone gigs, but they're taking experts' advice about social distancing seriously. And that is our show for you tonight. Keep it tuned to CBC News tomorrow. Multiple sources tell CBC News that Canada and the U.S. are in advanced talks about closing the border to non-essential travel. You can catch the latest updates on CBC News Network tomorrow. Have a good night.